Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting edition of Two Men in Black and White, an honest conversation. Mark Hayes, Brock and Ellis here with you. I'm in the ATL, Brock just outside New York City. And Brock, the three factors that we have been tracking: leadership, action, messaging, all starting to come into clear view right now. What a big weekend. Let's talk about some of these crowds. What'd you see that you really liked?
Huge, the numbers, right? You just start with the numbers, right? You just have so many people at the Bernie barnstorming tour, right? And I also like the way, I mean, Bernie and AOC have this similar message, right? He's cut from the same cloth, but her life story makes it different. Her age, her gender, she just brings a different, sizzle to the message. Arguably even a little more star power, right? 'Cause she's younger, but it's a great tag team, and they attracted huge numbers, and it's like, okay, that's where the energy is. Plain and simple. No one can argue against it. My question is just going to be my skepticism, my question, my concern is that middle of the road, moderate, I call them MAGA light, white Democrat who's always resisted the progressive movement and the squad and
Right,
the whole
right.
way of painting these things as radical or it's too much for the American public, always trying to pull things back to the middle. Are they going to go along, or are they going to like be sort of an anchor slowing down the movement?
Well, let me ask you this. That's a good point. But who are these Republicans slash blue dog Democrats slash, um, Democrats showing up at these Republican town halls, to give Democrat and Republican senators a mouthful saying, hey, do your job or step aside? Like, who are those the folks that we're trying to reach? Or are they already feeling, what Bernie and AOC are saying?
They're
Because,
already the people, the rank and file is feeling it.
right,
They've already moved there. They're not viewing it as so radical. Bernie's message of is not that radical anymore. It's just he's got some oligarchs to shoot against now that everyone sees. That's
right,
made the message easier and made it resonate for more. He's been
right.
saying this for a while, and it's just gotten more people in essence agreeing with him, right?
Yes.
So yeah, so the people are moving in that direction. I think they're going to drag the leadership along with the other. I can't call them leadership anymore. The other politicians along with them, or they'll get left behind.
Right.
So I'm not as worried about it as I was, because people can smell where the action is, and they're not going to want to be Schumered, right?
Right.
You don't want to be out there getting pegged as a Schumer who's complicit and rolling along and is like still play acting as the leader of the Senate, fighting for his seat when
Right.
there's just no one in the room listening anymore, right?
Right.
Meet the Press will take him, but no one else cares what he has to say. I mean, his message is just lost in the Democratic Party right now.
And nobody's watching Meet the Press.
No,
That's the
no
other
one's,
thing.
yeah, no one's
So,
watching.
yeah. But you made a good point about Bernie and AOC and their messaging, right? Now, MAGA is starting to help out. Let's talk about Howie Lutnick and his comments, right? So let's say Social Security didn't send out checks this month. My mother-in-law, who's 94, wouldn't call and complain. Lutnick, a billionaire, former Wall Street CEO, told the All In podcast. And here's the thing. That's the kind of messaging MAGA needs to do to help Bernie and AOC's message catch fire, right? You keep saying dumb stuff like that, and we'll ride right along on top of it because you know what? There are 69,999,999 Americans out there who need their Social Security checks. And for many of them, it's their lifeline keeping them out of poverty. I mean, how brain dead are these people? Like we've said, Brock, they're not good at this. They're not.
I mean, it's just okay. Maybe your mother-in-law doesn't need the check. She's got She's wealthy. You made billions. That's nice. I'm sure you funneled a little around, sprinkled around to the family. I get it. He's one fucking citizen out of tens of millions. Okay. So that's your sample set. Your mother-in-law wouldn't mind missing the check. That that means absolute bupkis to someone in the middle of Iowa who needs that money to go down to the general store and buy the food for the week. Like,
Right.
and there's more of those people in Iowa who need the check than the one-offs on the Upper East Side of Manhattan who don't need it. But how can you be sitting in a role where you're representing the American public, in essence, a public service role? That's the job where you're supposed to be. And it's not like business where it's profitability. You're thinking about the well-being of the citizenry. That's the job. How can you even think that way? How do you not even connect to the human condition around you? It's
It,
bizarre.
but Brock, it gets back to what I've been saying since we started this dog and pony show. I'm the dog, by the way. That it's the cruelty for cruelty's sake. Like, there's no reason to break down the Social Security system. There's no reason to break down the IRS and fire all these people, VA, veterans. It's cruelty for cruelty's sake, so we billionaires and oligarchs can make more money. And now people are starting to wake up to that because now you're hearing those questions at these town halls. Why do they need to stop our Social Security checks? There ain't 100,000 dead people out there getting Social Security checks. It's just not happening. So
Yeah.
for him to say that again, he's so disconnected from reality. And oh, by the way, if mom-in-law doesn't get her Social Security check, we can just fly her in my private jet to our estate where we'll have a car waiting for her and she can come to our home and get a nutritious meal.
Well, somehow Trump, despite being, quote, a billionaire himself, right,
Right.
was able to be endorsed and embraced by the general public, by poor people who be like he's one of us because they were attracted to his racism and how he hated the others. So white poor people would get on board with Trump and overlook the fact he's a billionaire who plays golf every other day, doesn't give a shit about them, only on private planes, doesn't even know how to drive, like just all the the things because he's had chauffeurs his whole life. I mean, just they overlooked it. But now when you get this secondary billionaire oligarchs. They don't get the same free pass that Trump got.
Right.
So they're just botching the message, right?
Yes.
Elon is terrible at delivering the message. He
Right.
comes off flat out Nazi, right?
Right.
Lutnick now horrendous delivering the message. Like he just stepped all over it on the Social Security side, which was already, something that was going to rile up the rank and file just
Right.
on the prospect of having money being taken directly away from them. This is even different than taxes, right? This is tangible, checks you just expect and live off of. So yeah,
It's
they're
our
missing the message, and Bernie and AOC are delivering a better message, and
yeah.
Walls is delivering a good message, but nothing as good as what Bernie and AOC are doing.
Let me stop you right there. Did you hear what you just said? Bernie and
What?
AOC are delivering a better message. Like, who thought we'd be saying that a week ago?
Yeah,
Right? Like, how good is the good Lord above that we can
I
now
know.
do that? You
But the
know?
thing is, Bernie's been saying this for 30, 40 years. And it's
Right.
like time has come, it's almost like time has come. Finally, everyone is getting what he's been saying forever and that the Democratic Party's always been afraid of. And oh, by the way, he's not in the Democratic Party, he's an independent. And he's telling all these other progressives that they should leave the party and just run as independents.
And Brock, remember too, now that he's saying it, right, for the past 40 years, they're finally starting to feel it. Right? I've been telling you this is going on. You just didn't feel it. Now that you're feeling it, especially white America,
Wait, America. Yeah.
Granny doesn't get her check, right? Now, again, white Americans tend to be wealthier, especially, at the end of their sunset years. But don't tell me it doesn't hurt. Don't tell me they're not feeling the pinch. And don't tell me in rural white America, the people that need those, so like our guy at the diner in Iowa, doesn't need his social security check, right? So now they're finally starting to feel it, and they're saying, "Hey, nah, this is not gonna fly," right? And now they're saying, "Hey, maybe Bernie and AOC got something here because you know what? They're saying the quiet part out loud. Trump can't keep a secret. He's saying the quiet part out loud. Lutnick is reverberating it. Peter Thiel, another POS from Germany, over here telling us what we need in America, talking about how dumbed down the Democratic Party got with Obama. Well, he was elitist. But then you switch to Biden, and Peter Thiel, of all people, says, well, this was a transition, to the dumbness of the party. And then Kamala Harris, she went to Howard University. What a dumb institution that is. There are no smart. He actually said there are no dumb smart people going to Howard University. And then with Walls, it got even dumber. So these people are saying they're doing the work for us. Now we have people who can deliver the message, and we have an audience that's feeling it, right? So now here's what we need, right? We need Black America to get hold of these messages. I posted Peter Thiel's comments in my alumni association group, and the comments I got, Black America needs to wake up and pay attention to what's going on and be a part of this. So we are understanding, although it was a personal affront to all of us in our chat, right? We understand we need to be involved in the action that's being taken as well. So
Well,
you're
Mark, I got to imagine the question back to you that Black America has to almost be sitting there in wonderment slash glee, maybe a little bit of like, you know, what's it, Schadenfreude, watching these crowds of white people up in arms, yelling at MAGA, yelling at their own representatives on the other side, rallying like crazy for like 90-year-old Bernie fucking Sanders, giving a
right.
message about how they're all getting screwed by the oligarchs and just going crazy in anger and boiling over because they're, having some shit going against them.
Yep.
And I mean, is Black America sitting there going about fucking time or?
Pretty much. Pretty
Yeah.
much. When I talk to my contemporaries, that's what folks are saying. And I'm talking about entrepreneurs, I'm talking about people working in corporate America, I'm talking about, like the everyday Black American who just wants a piece of the dream, right? Because now we're watching people who have been, handed the dream almost in our estimation, right? They had a much easier road to travel. But now we're saying, okay, now you know what it feels like, right? To have the rug snatched out from under your feet. This is what we've been dealing with for all of our adult lives. This is what our parents have tried to get us prepared for. This is why we fight through long periods of unemployment. This is why we prepare, we are told to prepare, keep cash in the house. Remember that with our DA, Fannie Willis here in Fulton County. Like, everybody in the courtroom thought it was weird because Black people kept cash in the house. We are taught that, right? Because you never know what's going to happen when white America is pulling the levers and the strings of power. So now we're seeing this and we're saying, okay, now they get it, right? But I don't think it's gotten to the boiling point for white America yet, because Black America, Roland Martin, my guy, keeps me dialed in too with Black America. And he's saying what we have been echoing: white America needs to lead the charge against white supremacy.
And not quite there yet, but and it's moving too slow, right? Because it's not moving at the pace of all the the drastic negative change that's going on. And so we're still too slow. The rest of the world's looking at us saying, you guys are moving way too slow. You're still letting way too much stuff go on. There's way too much focus and excitement about the fact that, quote, the courts are holding, right? Because like, okay, courts are sort of holding, but not the courts have no enforcement power. There's not really get, they're doing okay, right? They're treading water, but they're not really stopping any of this shit that's going on. They may be slowing it down. The
Right.
only way to stop it is the citizenry, right? We're the only ones that can actually stop things from happening.
Right.
I
And
don't, I mean, there's just so many negatives piling on top of each other. I think that's the other thing that's hitting white
yes.
America. And the calling Canada an enemy, we've talked about that, doesn't make sense to white America because it's a bunch of white guys that like live next door to us and always seem friendly and seem to be like our best friends. And like, why are we picking on them? We get it with Mexico, right? Because we're racist. So white
Right.
America's like, oh, okay, Mexico. Yeah,
Right.
they're bringing drugs in left and right. So trying to paint the Canadians as having secret fentanyl sites like just didn't work. It was just stupid. It was another lie that failed. And
Right.
Even the Europe's not making sense to us, right? Like
Right.
why we so we're mad at Europe now? We're all fucking white Europeans. Like that's who we us white people are.
And see the interesting thing too, Brock, is I remember we talked about the Boston Globe article where the average net worth of black families
Yeah,
was eight
$8.
bucks, right? Up in the Massachusetts, New England area. Citibank did an exhaustive study and found that racism had cost the United States $16 trillion. And when that study came out, I went back and looked at it this morning, and they estimated that black workers have lost $113 billion in potential wages over the past two decades because they didn't have access to a college degree, couldn't get one. So now we're destroying the Department of Education, right? We black folk understand, right, how difficult it is to access education, how difficult it is to pay for, right? Have you had a conversation with anybody trying to save up for college now? It's almost like, how much do you have to save? Right? Like I remember we went to BU to visit for my son's when he was looking at hockey school at colleges and wanted to play hockey. Coach brought us in and told us, tuition was 75 grand. That was in 2014. I'm like, Coach, 75 grand? Like that was 11 years ago, right? BC is like 85, 90K now per year, right? So like it's becoming more and more unaffordable, right? Now Harvard, I will, take my hat off to them. Under 200K, you get free tuition. I like it, right? It's a step in the right direction, but can you get in, right? You still got to get in. So, when we talk about what racism and white supremacy has cost us as a country, right? Why aren't we looking at, why this nobody is saying why white supremacy is a good direction for us, except for old white men and rich white men.
And it's amazing that it's worked for so many years, but the
Right,
Republicans know how to message things and get
right,
their rank and file, white America, racist, to vote their way,
right.
convincing them that that's in their best interest because in the social hierarchy of America, they sit on top of even people who have more money than them, but of another different color, but even just in their neighborhood, in their little world, they're going to feel on top of their little world because they're the white person in that community. But
Yep.
it's definitely going to is continuing to racism make us poorer because the travel industry is in the process of tanking because other countries are warning their citizens about coming here, particularly if you don't have the lily white complexion. And
Right.
but even Canadians now are warning against, their citizens from coming down here. That has a huge ripple effect from airlines to hotels to restaurants to hospitality. It's a huge chunk. And stack that next to the defense industry where NATO's like saying now we have to be self-sufficient and like we're just cutting our own businesses at the knees and it's going to
Yep.
trickle down. It's going to hurt people of color first. Who's going to get fired? Even at Target, who's getting fired first, right? As
Right.
they're feeling the pain, right? So
No
the
doubt.
unemployment's going to rise. It's going to hit black and brown people first, but it's hitting enough white people that they're riled up and maybe The crowds are given the sense that there should just be more of this, and that maybe
Right.
we can accelerate the action to a broader point. But the broader point is still going to get us to a really contentious place,
Right.
because it's going to
Right.
have to be like mass protests like we're seeing in Turkey and in
Hmm.
Belarus, like
Right.
or Belgrade. There's going to have to be mass protests, and those
Yep.
mass protests are going to trigger a reaction from Trump, and that reaction is going to be a crackdown and violent. And then what happens? Are is it tear gas is going to fly? Rubber bullets are going to fly? Are the real bullets going to fly? Like,
Well,
how
I
violent is it going to get on the streets, and
that's the
how
scary.
quickly?
That's the scary part. But I think that well, we can't say anymore because the leadership in our military divisions has now become Trump loyalists or is on his way to becoming that. So we can't even say that, our military leaders will hold the line when it
I don't.
comes to firing on its own citizens.
Yeah, I think it's going to be at a lower level. I don't think Pete Hegseth is going to say
Right,
no. You
right,
can't fire on your own citizens. I just don't. I'll believe it when I see it.
right.
So, and I know. I mean, we're a step two. I'm 2, 3 steps ahead of where we are now. We'll have to see what happens on April 5th, and is it April 5th or 6th in DC, and how big that day of protest gets. But if the Bernie and AOC rallies are any indication, and what's going on in the town halls any indication, you get the sense that that's going to really bubble up to some big numbers, and it's
Yes.
going to boil over into a lot of anger, and it's going to be the first sign of what's the government's reaction going to be to
Yes.
that many people out there on the streets getting that angry, because I don't know how quiet and peaceful it can be. And the more white people that are involved, the more violent it's likely to get.
Right. And here's the thing. Um, I'm thinking the opposite. I agree with you on that point, and then I don't, right? Because if
Okay,
you,
where do you disagree?
yeah, I think if you have white folks out there protesting, people are a little more hesitant,
They'll be more
right?
hesitant. The
The
state will be more hesitant, but
right.
the people will be more angry and apt to be violent, because white people we almost get to violence quicker, especially in a mob, right? In a mob
Right.
scenario, you see how quick, and you know it's always on the edge of tipping over. So I get it. The authorities themselves will be less apt to want to fire. The crowd will be more entitled and feel like that
Yeah.
they can knock shit down, basically.
Well, like the George Floyd protests, right? That's what we saw with George Floyd. Especially when we had so many of our white brothers and sisters out there protesting with us, we saw, how inflamed that situation got so quickly. And so to me, right, this is all of that bubbling up, right? This is our economic woes, this is our racial woes, this is our religious woes and differences, right? This is all that stuff that's been crammed into, the American ecosystem, right? That's kept us kind of stagnant, right? And now it's turning us backwards, right? Because like you mentioned, the defense industry, right? We're no longer a part of NATO, but we're no longer selling defense equipment. Think about the billions and billions of dollars lost there. You know, we can't get steel to make cars. Detroit and UAW leaders up there, they're preparing for massive layoffs. They're getting ready, for a recession, a deep, deep recession, and layoffs, and then trying to come back. So, like people are talking about depression. I haven't heard the word depression talked about this often in my lifetime, and I'm the big 6-0. So, like, what in the world is going on? Like, we've got to get out here. This is not an election year, and we're still getting numbers like that, right? For
Yeah.
AOC and Bernie. And like you said, those politicians don't want to be left behind, right? So hey, can I speak April 5th? Hey, can I come to the Bernie and AOC barnstorming tour? I want to go because that's what's happening right now. There are phone calls being made to, those event coordinators saying, "Hey, can you put me on as a speaker before AOC and Bernie?"
Well, there's a couple special elections that come up before that,
Yeah.
the 5th, right? So it's gonna be really interesting what happened. You got the Wisconsin state Supreme Court
Sure.
one where Musk is, you know, blowing dollars in, and actually I think he offered
Real,
$100 to individuals if they would come vote against it. And you don't know what people are going to vote on, but literally cutting checks to people, so undemocratic. And then you have the special election in Florida, I think on Matt Gaetz' seat. I'd been critical, but they were out there. Malcolm Kenyatta and David Hogg were both down there with that candidate. Like, I wasn't sure
nice.
if it
I
was
missed
Josh
that.
Wilder. Yeah, both down there in the last 48 to 72 hours,
And
speaking,
raised 16 million. Yeah,
raising money, raising profile, but just feet on the street and making noise, which is what I was hoping
gotta
to
have.
see. I don't know if Maxwell Frost was down there too. Um, and then there were a bunch of town halls that went on without their representatives. So I think it was
Right,
Indivisible that got people to show up. A whole bunch of the Republicans didn't show, and those just became angry rooms of people, screaming and yelling.
right. And that's what we
How do you get
want.
away with not showing up? How do you get away? I mean, I know your election's not for a couple of years, so they're just saying F it, and they don't want to get yelled at, but like it's just amazing to be an actual elected representative and not be willing to show up in your own district.
And the good thing is, Brock, just think about it. We're getting all this information not from mainstream media because they've quit. We've given up on them just like they gave up on our democracy, right? We are getting all this from the groundswell, right? This is a to the streets movement, right? You've got people, you got Midas Touch, you got Occupy Democrats, you got Dash Dabrowski, you got Brian Tyler, you got all these influencers out there who are covering these movements and these protests. You got AOC reverberating the crowds that are coming to see her. I mean, it we don't have to rely on the mainstream media to cover it because we see that they're not. So we know, how this has to be done.
I don't even know what's going on those stations anymore. I don't know who's watching CNN. Once in a while, I'll see a clip of someone with Scott Jennings, and I get, like, what's his name, O'Leary from fucking Shark Tank, like, put his hand on Angela Rye's arm, and she said, and she said,
Touch me.
don't be touching me. So, like, I know there's an occasional tidbit of a clip that
Right,
comes out from those stations, but like to me, like they're just irrelevant. I don't even know what they're saying or what's going on there anymore, or
right.
nor do I care,
Care.
because they're
Who
still
cares?
middle of the roading shit with like the quote balanced panel, and they're basically platforming MAGA is my view.
Normalizing. They're
Yeah,
normalizing it.
they
They're
normalize
acting
it.
if this is something normal. Like I'm getting the t-shirt that says this is not normal because it ain't, right? And anybody that thinks that it is out of their freaking minds. And we've got to just continue to push the fact that there is some action now. Leadership is emerging, right? The message is beginning to take shape. And the message is simple. Like AOC was saying, I think in Arizona, we want common sense government, right? It is not common sense to stop Social Security checks, right? It is not common sense to make my 87-year-old mother find a Social Security office that's open so she can go and prove that she is still alive and verify her identity. That is not common sense, right? Like the message is simple, right? Get rid of this autocrat and this autocracy. And there has to be something in our Constitution somewhere that says an unelected billionaire does not have the right to get his doji boys to come into our system of government and destroy it. I don't see how that's not in the Constitution
It might
somewhere.
not be, but with the Constitution gives the executive too much power. And you got Trump who like sleeps till noon, works 2 hours a day, says some inane shit, and goes plays golf, leaves it to these other people. I mean, you saw Trump was denying the fact that he signed that Alien Act, but
Yes.
it's in the register with his signature on it. But he was
Yeah.
trying to because it was getting negative buzz, he was already saying it was Rubio's idea, and they go, well, we all go along with Marco, right? So he's
Right.
already teeing up who the fall guy's going to be when that, goes sideways.
And Brock, how about the other huge story from last week at the end of the week that he slept through? That Musk was going to get all this sensitive information
Chinese, yeah,
about the
sensitive information
Chinese.
from China.
Yes.
Meanwhile, once again, in another one of those, you thought you were on the team, but you're not because you're not white. The fact that all these Cuban and Venezuelans who had come in, quote, the right way, and they're not citizens yet, but they had gotten right permanent residency, you know, and
Rallies.
Biden had allowed it, and now they're all going to be deported. And I was just like,
Right.
okay, that Miami vote that's turned Republican because they're all small business owners, or
Right.
they have this quote anti-socialism
Right.
messaging that's been
Right.
thrown their way. That's totally like no one knows
Democrats.
what the word. No one
Yeah.
even fucking agrees on what the word means anymore. So they're voting Republican, and now their brethren are getting thrown out of the country. They thought they were on board, they thought they were MAGA, they thought that they were okay with the white supremacy group. And now,
Right.
like I say, now they can sit right next to the crew from Dearborn, right diagonal from those farmers
Uh-huh.
in the
Yep.
disgruntled crew. Come on over. We welcome them all. We're only
Yep.
going to chuckle. We're
Open
only
arms.
going to chuckle a little bit at the beginning, and then
Yep.
we won't laugh at them anymore. And we'll say, we get it. Everyone makes mistakes. Anyone can get bamboozled. But please tell us that you've seen the light and you understand that this is fascism and you're not
Right.
welcome.
And you're not a part of the club. You're never going to be part of the club. And that's what they don't understand. I saw, a video where the a Cuban band had come up with a "We Love Trump" song, and we're going to vote for Trump. And it's just so sad that they've been bamboozled, hoodwinked, run amok, right? And now their families are going to be ripped apart. Think about how awful that is, Brock. And Black America sitting back. Well, we're not getting deported. Where are you going to send us? You're already locking us up in prison. And, now that this is happening, though, you know, my favorite word, clarity, right? We're getting the
Clarity.
clarity
Yeah.
we need to develop the message, right? And who we got to celebrate, bro. I'm gonna go crack a Gatorade with sugar, because we need to celebrate the fact that 1 week ago you and I were like digging our own graves because
Yeah,
we didn't think
it was
messaging.
lost. Yeah, Bernie had 2,400 people at an event in Wisconsin, and we were happy because it looked like the place was blowing out. Yeah, a week later they're in like Las Vegas and Denver and Phoenix. Right now they're in big
Yeah,
cities, and
yeah.
the crowds are 30,000 plus.
Did you see
And
that line in Nevada around the park to get in? I mean, because now everyone's saying, hey, screw this. This is not what we signed up for. And I get it. I get it. And so now that you've seen the light, like you said, come on over. We're gonna chuckle for a minute with you. We're gonna open open arms embrace you, and we're gonna move on and take the fight to the few numbers out there that think white supremacy is the way to go, because it ain't.
yeah, we just got the and then maybe they can convince the next person and the next person,
Right.
right? Where it's like, look, because they the negative hits just keep on coming, right?
Yeah.
They don't stop. Like as these, maybe a judge has stayed the firings, this, that, and the other thing, but the government's not operating right now,
No,
right?
no,
It's not
no,
doing
no.
anything for anyone, right?
Right.
Except for the 1%. Like they're the only ones that are getting anything. But even the business leaders aren't getting anything. Like the
Right,
legal profession is rolling over because, Trump threatened them and one of the big law firms capitulated and the
right.
rest of them are up in arms, which is great because now they can have their own little civil war about what is proper in this society and what their role is and their job is in this
Right.
society, and let them have their own come to Jesus moment and figure it out for themselves. But like, education's been stripped away and the healthcare system is in total decline, and we still have, diseases running amok that we'd never had in decades. And of course, egg prices have not come down, nor have any prices come down. And now we
Yep.
have every single ally in the world shaking their head and or just, tearing us a new one, saying that they can't trust us. So our entire role in the world has been flipped, backward.
Speaking of, speaking of the world, and then I'll let you go because I know you just had a busy week. But
Mhm.
Bernie Sanders posted on his social media that the US ranks dead last in life expectancy compared to other countries. Switzerland, 84.2 years, the US, 78.4. Dead last out of
Six
other
years.
developed
That's
countries.
6 years of life. And that's the ultimate scorecard, right? What's the
Right,
quality of life? What's the health of your citizenry?
right.
I mean, you can't
Everybody
fake
else in
that.
that list is in the 80s. We're
Yeah.
78.4. Black men, we're even less than that, So that's why I work out every day.
Yeah,
That's
and you see it. I mean, we didn't even talk about it when it first happened, but you had referenced Junior Bridgman passed away. Talk
yeah,
about a guy been a basketball player and a billionaire. Yesterday, George Foreman passed
yeah,
away. Now, boxers tend not to live long lives because they kind
right.
of beat themselves up. But like you look at the ages, right? And he's not living in the ripe old age of 84.
85.
He
Right.
didn't make that 85, right? He was in the low 70s. Junior Bridgman was, I think, 71, right? He
Right.
didn't get to enjoy his golden years after being so successful. Neither of them did. And you see that just all the time. Always look at the age, when you see someone well known pass away
Yep.
and you will kind of you wonder why. Yeah, and I mean that we're not even at the radical ideas yet of how fucked up the healthcare system is, even when it's working. Now we're
Right.
just focused
Right.
how even our shitty healthcare system isn't working, and
Right.
we got to even do some triage on it. But yeah, it's good to be back in the Northeast. It was 31 degrees this morning. I think it was 84 or something in Fort Lauderdale yesterday. We did power through and do a 16 plus hours on the road yesterday. But I will
Oh,
say, I can't it, it I can't tell you how depressing it is to be driving on 95 through South Carolina and then through Virginia and see these huge, what must be 60 feet, maybe they're 100 feet, huge flags hanging next to the road, Confederate
better.
fucking flags.
Yeah.
Confederate fucking flags for
Yeah.
everyone just to drive by in these little wired or gated areas where I guess no one can get into them, so the flag stays up. And that's the message, right? And just these parts of the country still hanging out, hanging on to a world that is so passed them by, but somehow that quote methodology, that racism still
Past from
infects,
generation to generation.
inflicts, and destroys America and gets us to where we are today because the racism is underlying
Yep.
all these actions, right?
Yep.
It's so embedded in Trump, and then the team around him is just like flies to honey with Project 2025 and taking away things that make the country more equal, more free, more fair, more just to get a white supremacy world or movement or country. And
Well, so here's the deal, folks. We're going to be back tomorrow. And Brock, so we got action, we got messaging, right? We got leadership emerging. More leadership is coming because everyone wants to be a part of it. We're going to keep an eye on that. The other thing we got to keep an eye on in these April 1st special elections, because if we can flip those 3 seats, we then can put an end to this crap that's going on in Congress, right? These spineless Republicans in the House rubber stamping everything that Trump sends through without, they're not even reading this crap. They're just rubber stamping it, sending it through, and then hiding from their constituents. So let's keep an eye on that. We'll focus on that again tomorrow. Glad you got home safe, my friend. What a pleasure to see your smiling face.
Thank you, sir. Talk to you tomorrow.
All right, sounds good.